I'm going to show you how to use Google Maps to keep track of people, places, and things. Sometimes when I'm volunteering ADRN or CERT, I'm asked, are our people affected by a disaster? It's a good question. Okay, we're going to use Google Maps. One way to start it is to go to google.com, click on your little buttons here, select Map, and when that pops up, click on the menu on the left and go to your places. And when you click there, you can select Maps on the right, and at the bottom, select Create Map. And you get a default map. You can also type in maps.google.com. Instead of going to the search, it'll take you directly to Maps. And once again, click on the menu and then click on your places, Maps, and then you hit Create Maps at the bottom. A faster way is just to type mymaps.google.com, and it'll take you right to where you have already created your maps. And then you can create a new one just by hitting Create Map. And again, you'll be presented with an empty map to get started with. For instance, at the ADRN, when you log in as a DRC, you can click on Roster. And when you select that, it'll show all your people. And then you can say, I want to export this to a CSV file. Click on that, and that'll come back with another link on the top of the page where you can actually get the file. And when you click on that, it'll download a CSV file of your information. Here's an example of a de-identified data file. You can use any type of file really, as long as you have headers in there and you do specify the address, like the main address, city, state, zip, even country if you want to. Maps will try to put the markers at the most correct part of your address. If the city's incorrect, it'll match it to the state. If the address is correct, it'll match it to the center of the city. And if you get the address correct and the city and state wrong, who knows where it's going to try to put your marker. So let's go build a map. Let's click on Untitled and give it a name. In this case, Emergency Response. And I'm going to keep track of people. And I'm going to have this thing called a layer, which is one grouping of things I'm going to map. So I'm going to call it My People. Okay, so I'm going to click here and I'm going to import that file that I prepared, the CSV file. And the first thing it's going to ask me is, when it plots these values on the map, what do I want to use to plot it with, like the address? You see the different columns I have. I'm going to pick address 1, city, state, and zip. That's what we keep track of. And then it's going to ask me, well, how do I want to label these things? And for right now, I'm just going to use the last name on these little markers that show up. It's going to import, and it'll relatively zoom to where some of your items are, and you can see the little markers. Okay. There is an error in that yellow box. We'll get to that later, but you can see it's taken the addresses and plotted them out for me. I can sort those. So for instance, I can make them all to be numeric, 1 through however many I have. Or I can have default markers, or I can have special customized markers. And then I can tell what the label is going to be. In this case, it's the last name. So it puts the last name over here. So right away, I get a view for where some of my people are. And now I can say, well, what's their I am ready level? I can see, are they response ready? Again, these are artificial names I'm using here. And I can change the background of the map. In case it gets too busy, I can make it lighter. There's 6 of them you can pick from. I can make it more aerial footage, if you will. For now, I'm just going to pick a lighter background. And what I like to do is actually sort by city, and I can tell and colorize where people are from in different cities. I'll use the last name again. You see I have some outliers out here. What I want to do is the ones that are closest to me, I'm just going to make them blue or green. So that's the ones that are more common, and I'll make the outlier sort of stand out with a red, orange, or yellow. Just sort of moving around, zooming around. So now I have some errors. Let's see how we fix that. I click on that and it pops up my data, and then you can see where it's highlighted pink or red. It's missing some information, and I need to go and at least fill some of that out. I'll put the city, and it'll put it to the geographic center of the city, at least if I don't know the address. And same for the others. Ideally, you have correct data, because we don't want this to be a data editing exercise. And similarly, you may fill out data here, but then you have to figure out, how do I get my system of record or the location where I downloaded the data from updated? So it's better to, when you're using maps, just make sure your data is correct, or edit the CSV file ahead of time so you don't have to spend too much time here. Okay, all the pink marks are gone. My data is correct. Should be able to plot most everything. All right, back at my map, you can see where the new plots are showing up. Sort of Gerald at the center of the city. I'm just going to change a couple colors here. Make them show up as outliers. Okay. Look, I can come in here and edit directly on the point, change it to Mr. W. I'm putting an invalid address in. So you can edit each point. Instead of going through the table view, you can click on each point, edit if you want to also. Not just values, but you can even add a picture, as we'll see later. And yeah, you can see it showed preferred name showing up. Not all of them have that data. Let's go back and use last name again. Okay, let's see what we're going to do next. I will show you later, but you can do some other things like re-import the data file and overwrite everything. You can do merges. You can add extra data that just goes along with it. And then you can export it also. And there's the data table again I showed you before. Let me go change the phone number. Yeah, okay. Here we go. So now we created an overall map. We created a layer and we've added some data to it. In this case, the data is people. Well, let's add another layer, and you see it pop down below. And now I'm going to add a layer called disaster with some identifier. So this is something that's going on. So it's a layer called a disaster for that day, and there may be a few things happening. There's a ruler here, there's a map thing, and there's a point of interest. I'm going to drop a little marker here myself, and I'm going to edit that. I'm going to call it Command Center. All right, so I have another layer that's related to the Command Center. So I've got my people separated from a specific incident. In this case, a certain disaster that's happening. And now I'm going to do the little line drawing. I'm going to drag and click. Make sure you connect it back to the first one, and it draws a polygon. And I'm going to call that one fire, first fire. People probably having deja vu of this actually happening. So now underneath this disaster, I have two things happening. I have a fire and, ironically, I'm going to have a flood. So these are little polygon markers I'm putting on here. On the first layer of my people, I had they're little pieces of the table that each marker represent. And I can mix them per layer, but this particular one is just drawing primitives that I'm putting on there, in this case a flood at the lake. And you can colorize that however you want to. There we go. So I've got two layers, one with people and the second with the command center and two incidents happening. Notice I can turn that off and not look at it. Turn it back on, I can see it. I can hide all my people and just see those things. So the layers are just groupings of items that go on the map. I don't know how to reorder the layers. I don't know which one draws on top of the other. Okay, and you can look on the left, I added another layer already, and it's called After Disaster. I put a mark in there and a shelter in there. Yeah, so you can see on the left, see the blue line on the left of that layer? That's the one I'm currently editing. So if I drop new things, it'll go into that layer. And I can, while I'm on the people layer here, you see the blue line? If I put something there, it dropped it on the bottom of my people. Of course, they don't have all their data filled in, but that's okay. And it plots it where I put the marker. Okay, flood. Hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add a picture for the flood. This might be good if you're giving somebody directions, and they know to go. Or if you're saying report to somebody, you can actually have their picture in here so they know what the person looks like. Don't overuse it. It is just a mapping tool. Yeah, see, I can see the lake. There's another little tool, the ruler. I can go from point to point and drag it, and I can see about how far that is. It doesn't stick, meaning when you go click something else, it's going to disappear, but it's a quick way to measure things. See, it disappeared. Another thing I can do is just preview what it's going to look like when I share it with somebody and or when I print it. So somebody can see the same thing, but they'll only be able to interact with it. They won't be able to edit it and create content. I can also share it for editing. I can print the map too. You can print it as a picture or PDF file. It's loading a PDF. Got a little glitches on the left. It puts the markers, but it doesn't give anything. I think it's better just to print to the printer or give somebody direct. So you can print the whole map, but on each layer you can export it to CSV file. You can't export all of the layers to one CSV file because they have to have the same sort of structure. So you can save all your people, save your disasters, save your after disasters, and reuse them in different maps. Usually your people would be more static and then the others will come and go. So that's a convenient way if you actually wanted to take the data down and re-import it into your system after you edited it. When I'm ready to share the file, I just click on share. A little pop-up pops up and I can share by typing in email addresses or copying the URL. If I'm going to click save to drive, it allows me, for instance, to type in an email address. Here's a testing email address. I can type in several of them. I can make them editor or just viewer, that little click on the right, give them a note and hit send. And you can send it to non-Google users also. If I want to just copy the URL, I'm in Edge now. I'm going to launch Chrome. I'm not logged in. And you'll see that it'll just load this. And since I gave it view only access, they can't edit it. They can only look at things. They can click on different layers and turn them on and off. But that's all that's available for them to do. When I'm finished with this map, I've saved things, printed, shared, whatever. I can go back to the main map page and I can see other maps that I've created and continue editing those if I want to. And the last thing I'll say is it's up to you. If you keep the data you've been given access to in Google, it is protected with your login. Or if you just delete my roles or my people, for instance, and reload them each time you actually want to use it. Just be careful with the data. It's privileged information and treat it accordingly. Hope this helps out. Let me know.